What is your illness and how does it manifest itself?
Vampire disease is a rare genetic disease that may become apparent or it may not. At first, I only had pains. There were 2 exploratory operations, but nothing has been found. But the pains continued. Nothing could help me. My stomach just hurt. Then the illness began to manifest itself mentally. But I didn't tell anyone because I was afraid. I had a job, and I had the feeling that I had lost myself. Moreover, my vision was blurred. It is one of the signs of a mental illness. About a year and a half ago, I began to experience something like visual hallucinations. And it was as if someone was talking to me. A voice with a certain timbre and intonation simply appears in my head. Sometimes it makes me do something. The psychologist says that we should be friends with the voices, because this is just a figment of my imagination. My illness can be explained with a line from Zemfira's song, "I am sick because of resentment against people." All the time I had a feeling that people are simply wrong, and maybe it resulted in my desire to wash everything off. My illness manifested itself when I was 18 years old. It was the 2nd year of university. It started to show up when I was given a room in a student dormitory with some girls whom I didn't like very much. I had never had a desire to clean. I was a normal teenager with a mess in the room and I was totally okay with it. At first I started to order my clothes. Then I ordered things by colors, and in a rectangular shape. Then I started to dust every day, then twice a day. I started washing my hands for 5 minutes, which is long. Then I washed them all the way up to the elbows for 15 minutes until they started to bleed. It lasted from 1 to 15 minutes and time kept increasing. At first I attributed this to awakened perfectionism, but then I began to wash my jacket every time after classes. Then I was scared to go there because everyone there was dirty. I didn't have time to study. I had to wash all the clothes after classes, but I hadn't a washing machine. I had to wash it by hand. My very first relapse occurred after my grandparents died. I tried to commit suicide. It was a spontaneous decision. I didn't realize what I was doing. I had terrible hallucinations. At first, I had mental confusion. Then, various crazy ideas began to appear in my mind. My mother has a brother, my uncle, and it seemed to me that he was pursuing me. It seemed to me that he was going to break into the house and hurt me. Once, I kind of sensed him behind my back. It triggered me. I broke the window glass and jumped out of the 3rd floor. I only remember the ambulance. They brought me to the hospital. I woke up in intensive care. At first, I didn't realize that I had fractures. Nothing hurt at all. When I came to, I rather felt remorse for what I had done.
I used to be a real internet troll. It was like an obsessive habit. Like I could get impressed by something and could decide to behave shockingly. Even though in ordinary life I was timid, secretive, and constantly scared. I found out that I had paranoid schizophrenia quite by accident. I had to undergo a testing to become a designer at an enterprise for people with disabilities. Were there any wake-up calls in your childhood?
The most important wake-up call was that in the 5th form, I already had another diagnosis, trichotillomania. I used to pluck my eyelashes and eyebrows. My mom took me to a dermatologist, but obviously he said everything was fine. Then my mom noticed that I was doing it myself and took me to a psychologist, but it didn't help. And we stopped trying. I put up with it, my mom put up with it, we just started living with it.
I was a rather aggressive child, with mood swings and outbursts of anger. I constantly wanted everyone to leave me alone. But at the same time, I wanted to shock the audience with some actions. I could use rude statements or coarse language in front of adults. Once I fried insects in a pan. My parents noticed these oddities in my behavior, and when I was 6 years old, decided to put me on the register of a psychoneurological dispensary. They criticized me for such behavior. They scolded me, even gave me cuffs on the nape, but I felt satisfaction from the negative emotions of others. I was fueled by them, like an energy vampire, like a troll. Well, fortunately, somewhere between the age of 12 and 15, it began to fade. I began to show empathy, stopped torturing insects and domestic animals. I even got guinea pigs.
Now I understand that the first wake-up call was the depression that I had been having since I was 13. I remember being emotionally closed. Well, this was the first and probably the most important symptom. I had the most ordinary life. Like all children, I went to kindergarten. My illness began in the summer when I graduated from high school, and it was the same summer when I applied to college. My first relapse happened.
What was the treatment?
I arrived at mental health center in a state of hysteria. All my clothes were wet after washing, so I had to wear my boyfriend's clothes. I cried, the skin of my hand was cracked. I could only cry. I kept saying, please do something. I thought I just needed some pills and everything would be fine. But they told me, you should stay. It was like an axe falling on my head. What? The word nut house was in my head. I'm gonna stay at a nut house. What? A nut house? I just need a pill. I am okay. I do wash my hands. They allowed me to jump the queue. I stayed in VIP department. As everyone joked there, it means that there wasn't any Napoleon there. That month was a month of acceptance and awareness. Thanks to the doctor who explained what was happening to me. After the hospital, I told my parents, I need psychotherapy. There is simply no other way, I'm sorry. My parents had small savings, about $1,000 or $1,500. I don't really remember. Until we ran out of money, I went to the therapist. Now I can at least leave the house like a normal person. After the first hospitalization, I was prescribed pills and therapy. At first, I took the pills. I returned to the college. I graduated from cook courses, then pastry chef courses. And then I began feeling so good that I decided that I no longer needed the pills. I didn't tell my doctor. I just stopped taking them. After that, I had a breakdown again. And one day, in fact, it was in the night, I attacked my mother. I hit her. My mom called the ambulance and the police. She had a concussion, and I got into mental health center. My treatment now consists of taking an antidepressant and an antipsychotic. But despite the medications, there are still residual manifestations. Sometimes it seems to me that people are talking about me. In Belarus, my case is one of 6, so there are only 5 people like me. There are no centers for treatment of this disease. My treatment is a healthy lifestyle, not taking some pills, psychological support. I can only get intravenous therapy in the hospital. Well, for now. So I can go to the clinic to get the IV. As for psychological help, it's communication with people, going to psychologists.
There was a time when I thought there was some kind of conspiracy against me, and I stopped taking all my pills. After that, I became more impressionable. My sleep got worse, my heart rate increased, and I became more stressed. It ended in such an ugly story. I fought with my father. After that, I decided that it was better not to experiment and refuse medication. Now I'm taking one antipsychotic. There's still a certain tendency towards shocking people, contradictions in thinking. Like, today I love it, and tomorrow I don't. And the day after tomorrow I'll come up with something else. How do your friends and family react to your diagnosis?
My family knows, so everything is fine. As for friends, many did not understand. Many still do not understand me, because really big changes have occurred. I feel like a completely different person. You know, I always considered myself A very good friend, but once, after the manifestation of my disease, I just wanted to express everything that was painful for me. Many people dropped out because of this, became estranged, and I felt that it was necessary. My neighbors really support me. They saw me being weak, weird, and they began to support me. It seems to me that distant relatives still don't really understand what's happening to me. Once they even told my mom that I came up with it, so that not to study, to stay in a nut house. There was no easier way, right? They still think so. Mom thought so too at first, but she saw me in the nut house. She talked to the doctors who said, "Hello, lady, everything is serious." And she began to listen, and now she seems to understand that I have OCD, but not completely. My father just silently accepted, as if he was told, "Your daughter has bronchitis." He was like, "Yeah, well, bronchitis, so we need pills and a doctor," like this. After I beat my mother, she talked to me about it. She said she forgave me. She said that she understood that this happened because the illness had worsened, and she was not angry with me. Dad visited me in the hospital. He worries about me a lot. Mom and Dad love and protect me very much. And my friends support me a lot.
My father supports me in a way a father can support a son, gives me some good advice. Our relationship has improved. My friend, though I consider her as unrequited love, also helps. Takes me to various events, for sports, jogging, for example. It gives me moral support. Do you have problems with personal life because of your illness?
At that time, I had a boyfriend. We were together for 5 years. Such a long school love. At first he tried to fight this with me. He bravely scrubbed the walls at night. Sometimes I had tantrums. I could fall on the floor in hysteria, screaming, scratching my face. I understand that this is very difficult to experience, especially when you started dating a normal girl. And of course, it simply became impossible. Drop by drop, it dripped on him. He could take no more, and we had to break up. I had no relationship for a long time. Then I met a guy. Moreover, it was a man who understood me. I was in intensive care for a long time, and he supported me very much. He brought me back to health. He helped me to overcome the worst moments.
My fear of women appeared due to the fact that my mother often thrashed me in childhood. Maybe that's why I never had a relationship. Nevertheless, I'm planning on getting rid of this phobia, marry a very beautiful, caring, and most importantly, healthy girl. I want 5 children, 4 girls and 1 boy, and the boy will be the oldest.
So far, I have no friend, life partner. I dream of a family. I want a big family. I want to have at least 3 children, but I believe that I need to recover first and then start thinking about having a family. Now I have a boyfriend who almost completely accepts my OCD. We live together, he corrects my behavior, we have no problems. He washes his hands. Our apartment has areas where guests can come. They may sit in the kitchen and in the living room. Nobody goes to the bedroom. This is just for me, my territory. And there is even a better territory, the closet, my half of the closet. No one is allowed there, no one can open it, no one can even breathe there. When I leave, I seal it. At my place, very few people can go to the toilet, a very narrow circle of people. This is difficult to explain to unfamiliar people and very shameful. For example, my boyfriend's uncle, he knows about my diagnosis, but he probably doesn't understand. And I'm so embarrassed all the time. When someone goes to our toilet, I feel like, ugh.
Do you tell new friends about your disease?
Now I make new friends mainly via the support center for people with mental illnesses. Beyond the center, I communicate with people without mental disorders, mainly on the internet. Usually, I don't tell people about my illness, but I think if I find proper people and find it necessary to tell them about it, I will tell.
Now it's quite difficult for me to meet new people. I just wait for fate to give me them, and then I begin to talk, to open up to them. I used to say right away that I was schizophrenic, but now I have become more careful with it.
I don't think it should be hidden. How do people hide it? This is really hard. Usually when I first meet somebody, I explain, I'm Lucy. I have OCD, I have such and such problems. Just don't touch me, please. Sometimes this happens unexpectedly. A person approaches, extends a hand for a handshake, and I step back and they think that something is wrong with them, or I consider myself a star. I immediately say, it's not about you, it's me, I have problems, it's okay. Here's a blowing kiss, everything is super, you're cool, it's my problem.
What would you want to say about your diagnosis?
Often, I have to explain to people like me that they are not to blame. This is not a problem. There is nothing to be ashamed of. People are very shy about OCD. I'm trying to explain that if you rob an old woman, it's bad. It's worth being ashamed of. As for OCD, you haven't done anything wrong. It's not your fault. And in order to move on, you need to accept it, and people must know about it, because otherwise you will not feel comfortable. And when you feel uncomfortable, it's harder to move on. In the CIS countries, people are afraid of psychotherapists, they're afraid of antidepressants, they're afraid of registration, a lot of different excuses. Don't be afraid, you may or may not be able to recover, but it will definitely become easier for you to live if you just go to the doctor. It's important not to forget that these are your problems, not the problems of other people. You should not force others to do all those strange things that you do. They should not do this. It took me a long time to realize that no one should do this because of me. I want to advise healthy people, people without a diagnosis, to be more tolerant of us, so that there was no indifference. If you notice that something is wrong with you, I would advise you to share it with your relatives first. If you are not understood in the family, then probably it's better to turn to psychologists. If psychologists do not help, then a psychotherapist. Positive examples of people who coped with this, who live happily, can give you so much support. Live and enjoy life, no matter what. Do not listen to anyone.